So I think we can begin with the session. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are, and welcome to the Every Use Company webinars. You will be muted during the webinar, and but if you have any questions or comments, you can use the question section. We will answer them all at the end of the webinar. If you have any technical issue also, please use the chat box or send an email to support at the Reuse Company or reusecompany.com. The webinars will be recorded, and in a few days, we will send you the link to it. The topic for today is how to kick off your KM knowledge management project. And I will introduce now the company, who we are. With me, I have Katerina Godunova, which is a key account manager here at the Reuse Company, and she is today's presenter. My name is Jose Pereira, and I will be hosting today's webinar. So first, a few words about the company. The Reuse Company is a tool vendor specialized in the application of reuse tools, semantic technologies, and artificial intelligence to improve the digitalization of the systems engineering lifecycle. We promote lifecycle management methodologies guided by reuse, based on knowledge-centric approach, supporting the notion of authoritative sources of truth, offering connectivity to everything, unlimited interoperability, and providing full support to technical management as in ISO 15288. We are usually known in the market for our software tools, RQA Quality Studio, RAT Authoring Tool, Traceability Studio, VMD Studio, and KM Knowledge Manager. And now we are proud to announce that we are launching our new product, Access Engineering Studio. This is the agenda for the webinar. First, why knowledge management? Why is it important? Then we will see how to start. And after that, we will see how to communicate and improve. Finally, we will have some time for questions. So let's start right now. Hello, Kate.
Thank you, Jose, for introducing. So as mentioned before, today we'll dive into the practical issues of knowledge management. In the previous webinars that we've done before, the long webinars, the express webinars, you definitely have seen numerous functionalities of Knowledge Manager and how to use them. But today we want to talk more about practical issues and kind of see how we can solve some of the user-friendliness aspects of managing Knowledge Management, which is a very powerful tool full of capabilities and functionalities. So let's dive directly into the reasons of why we actually should care about knowledge management in general. So the first part of the value proposition that we offer is sort of a guideline to transform data into information and knowledge. A company, any company, of course, generates vast amounts of data that, when structured and having a certain reason, will represent the information. But the gap between information and knowledge is huge, because knowledge is something that you actually can apply accordingly to the sector where you're trying to do so. And that's what we're trying to perceive with the usage of KM Knowledge Manager. We want you to exploit one of your most valuable assets. The second reason for caring about knowledge management is to be able to record the engineer's knowledge. Because of course, we have numerous know-hows on site when a certain person has a task. So it's very clear how to do this, and especially with expertise, there are no questions arising in the process. However, we consider that people shall not be the storage of the information. There should be an external source that will store the specific information, specific knowledge about your project, about your company, and will help you to transfer this knowledge to the newcomers to your company, or maybe across different projects or teams. The third reason for us to use knowledge management is, of course, to be able to establish guidelines for the know-hows. So it's not just about recording this information, but actually to be able to have an organized approach for this information flow within a company. If, for example, the project that you're creating kind of resembles the project that you had before, so you will have a kickstart without going from scratch, starting to assemble all the knowledge pieces and know-hows that you will be implementing again. The fourth reason for us is to be able to detect errors earlier. Of course, we expect our projects not to have any errors at all, but it doesn't happen like this normally. And we think that having knowledge under control, it's definitely of help to detect some hidden effects earlier and be able to prevent or detect the errors when they happen. And the fifth reason for us of caring about knowledge management in general is to be able to automatize the quality inspection. At the end of the day, knowledge management in general helps you to empower some other functionalities. That's what we also do with our tool. What we do is to enhance the quality, and it will help you to automatize and make better decision and have better decision making from the textual point of view and from the understanding point of view of your project. So if we know the reasons so far of why we should actually discuss all of this and have this webinar, so let's tackle some of the questions about starting, about kicking off your real project, some practicalities about that. So if you started with a new project, probably the first question you should ask to yourself and your team is, do you even need the vocabulary control? Because maybe your vocabulary is very, very scarce, or you don't feel like you're gonna get some perks from managing your vocabulary and your knowledge. But normally the answer is that you would like to perfect consistent knowledge presence within your own project and maybe across several. So if this is your situation that you would like to have this consistency issue solved, of course, the answer is yes, you need the vocabulary control. The second question you might ask yourself when you're starting a very new project that wasn't implemented anywhere and you're thinking about KM Knowledge Manager is, what kind of vocabulary do you want to control? In this sense, it's important to define the scope and also the size. So KM can manage vast amounts of data, and it's not just a database, it's for you sort of a user-friendly interface to be able to access this knowledge inside. But you should have a very clear idea about the scope of the vocabulary and what parts of the project it's going to be covering. So in the majority of cases, normally you pretend to cover the whole project, but these questions should be clear for yourself to afterwards be able to establish the hierarchies and the structure within. The third thing you should think about is how to structure. So once you know what parts of the project shall be included, it's definitely time to group your vocabulary and organize your ontology in general. Ontology, it's sort of not just a database, but it's a storage of your knowledge that you want to have structured, because eventually that's what's going to be fueling your project requirements, if you have them, and will be for sure empowering the knowledge management itself. And the fourth step to start when you're just beginning with the new project is to upload this knowledge. So obviously you might have stored some of your data somewhere, even though the project is new. And it doesn't have to be manual. We offer different techniques to upload your knowledge with certain ease. For example, you can extract your vocabulary from legacy documentation, or you can extract it from the models. We actually have done a few webinars in the past month about that, about knowledge extraction from legacy documentation and knowledge extraction from models. So have a look at those if that's your case and you're actually wondering on how to do this migration. I guess this short webinars might help you out. If we're talking about starting with a project that is already ongoing, so in the middle, in the process, you decide that you do want to manage your knowledge, the first question for you is solved. So you need to decide what vocabulary do you already use, and to actually check it, to go through all the vocabulary and understand maybe there's something missing, or maybe there are some, let's say, extra elements that you don't want to have when you actually try to migrate and have a standardized approach to your knowledge management. The second thing to do when you want to start using knowledge management interfaces in an ongoing project is to remember that your goal is to simplify and generalize the approach. So there should be some sort of a common approach to the knowledge management that you want to pursue, because at the end of the day, when you try to establish the structure should be easy and understandable by different members of the team or different teams inside your company. Another thing you should probably consider when you're trying to migrate your ongoing project to some knowledge management interfaces is to try to correct inconsistencies before uploading the knowledge, because if you can do this. Of course, we help you out with inconsistencies, and that's actually what the tool is partially doing, to help you find some overlapping. But if you see that there are some elements missing, such as, for example, the consideration of all the stakeholders' needs. Imagine you have a project, you're trying to create a product, and you suddenly forget about one of the stakeholders that is definitely implied, and the vast amount of knowledge should be incorporated before. So obviously you will be noticing this later, but this sort of things related to consistency are, let's say, will be given better results when they're fixed as early as possible. And of course, the last point is also to upload the documentation. If this is an ongoing project, for sure, you'll be storing your knowledge, or at least your information, in some of the interfaces. So that's also about it, about automatizing this upload and making it as easy as possible. In terms of how to start with the onboarding in general, what you as a newbie in KM Knowledge Manager, what would you be doing? So what is going to be your workflow? The first thing is, of course, to understand what functionalities exist and how can you make use of them. So to understand the whole scope, and only afterwards to choose what functionalities suit you, because that's true that KM Knowledge Management is a very, very powerful and potent tool, but maybe you will not need all the techniques implied there. So it's about selection and your time optimization. After you have this clear, the third point is to transfer your data, as I've shown you on the previous slide. So to actually be able to understand what data you will be using and how to create knowledge out of it. And definitely to be ready for the improvement cycle, because when we're just using a typical database, normally we don't start with a 100% complete database on all levels. We improve the database from time to time and incorporate some new features that are emerging. So it's the same when you try to manage knowledge. Of course, the more complete your knowledge is going to be at the first place, better for you. But it's completely fine to be able to improve and add some new terms, some new groups, some new hierarchy elements on the go. That's what the tool is meant for you to be able to update and have sort of a lean management of your knowledge within the project that is very adaptable to the needs and changes within it. So going into the communication part of starting your project. If you've started and you kind of have the all the support assembled, so the communication issue is, of course, something we should discuss and confront the most pressing concerns. So from the user friendliness point of view, what we should think about is the roles distribution, because for sure there are going to be several people at least implied in using the knowledge inside, maybe not in managing the tool itself. Normally, our proposition in this case is to have a person, a manager if you want, assigned that responds for KM Knowledge Manager, and this person doesn't have to have a clear NLP knowledge or maybe some semantics or be really involved in the textual writing part. It's more about a person that really understands the project, understands how what you're trying to create works, what are the elements, what are the dependencies. So it should be a person fully involved in the ecosystem creation, because when you will be trying to create a hierarchy, so to say, for example, if you create a car, you know that a car has several parts, such as a wheel, such as a seat. So these dependencies, that a seat is actually a part of the car and not the other way around, it should be something that this manager that tries to create these relationships that, of course, should be meaningful, needs to understand the project. And the NLP part, it's the automatized thing. So it's something that we offer to you, and your goal is just to populate your ontology and start creating knowledge out of the terms that you uploaded. The second point that should be discussed from the communication point of view is, of course, how to manage the several users, because if we have a project that maybe is involving different teams or several members of the same team, so an issue as of working in parallel, of course, will appear. And in this case, our solution is to use suggestions. So what are you going to have is one person that will be the administrator, most likely this person that exactly understands the project. And this person will be able to accept the suggestions proposed by the users. So it's as easy as just clicking a few buttons and saying, hello, I would like to add this term, or I would like to delete, or I would like to rename this term, or I would like to offer a certain connection between them, because, and you even can explain it. All of this information flow can be done in the tool. So it doesn't have to be an extra email thread by saying to your colleague who sits 15 meters away from you, hello, I would like to add this term. It's easier, and these notifications will be immediate and in the tool itself. So that of course facilitates the communication within the tool. The third point is to confront the inconsistency, because that's of course is a threat when you're trying to involve some roles distribution and several users inside one single tool. So here the issues, as I've mentioned to you before, is the overlapping. For example, when several users try to incorporate the same term, or they try to call the same concept in different ways. So this is also the thread within the communication, but in this case, KM does it by itself. So you will not be able to introduce the same term twice with the same term tag, for instance, because it simply does not permit the duplications. And you have several functionalities that for sure you can revisit in our more hands-on previous short webinars, where we've been showing how to find these inconsistencies. I'm talking about the last two webinars about KM we had about ontology and patterns, where you can just check the offering of the inconsistencies between the words or some duplications inside the KM tool. Because at the end of the day, although you're trying to confront all the stakeholders' need, you would like to have your ontology lean and organized. And the fourth point to bear in mind in the communication is to actually be aware of what the user's goal is. That's key when you're trying to decide the communication ways. And of course, the goal of the user when you try to use some sort of knowledge interface is to empower the approach to quality. If you know what we do at the Reuse Company a bit, or you've seen some of our tools that Jose has mentioned before, such as our QA Quality Studio, so our approach to quality is the CCC approach. It's the approach promoted by INCOSEN. And basically it includes three pillars of quality, which is correctness, consistency, and completeness. And of course, it's about writing requirements. Here we're talking about knowledge, but that's what we do. So knowledge empowers your quality, because you don't just write the requirements that are non-domain specific. A lot of your requirements definitely are related to the domain specific centric words, and having them under control, of course, will empower your quality results. So knowing how to communicate within our project that is already starting, let's see how we can probably improve. If we have a project, it's kind of working well, we figure out the communication. So what are the improvement techniques that we may offer you from our side, and how to deal with them? The first thing you probably can consider if you're trying to create a better workflow within KM is to add libraries. So libraries are regulated approaches either of the metrics or of the vocabulary, of patterns, of certain rules inside. And normally they're done by industries. So you can have some space industry, for example, or you can have approaches to numbers writing. So how to write your numbers within textual requirements, or you can have a library that confronts the Babok, for example, guide. In this sense, the libraries are, let's say, easily manageable, because it's just about importing it, and you will get in KM a set of new rules, new metrics that will be empowering your current ontology. The second way of improving your workflow is, of course, asking for consultancy, because from our side, we don't just offer you the tool and offer you to solve out by yourself how to use it. We do help you with the training and consultancy sessions that can help you to optimize and make a use more efficient, because maybe there are some better ways to do the same thing that you're trying to do, or maybe there are some ways that you're not even aware of. So in this case, of course, the goal is to communicate between the supplier and the user, and we'll do our best to help you out to get the most out of the tool. And the third point is what we can recommend is to start with one project, because at the end of the day, the goal of the companies is to avoid disruption, not to have some breakthrough changes that will be breaking the whole current workflow. We offer you to escalate the efforts, so to start step by step. It's not just about step by step within one project, it's about understanding how it works, establishing the guidelines, creating a good knowledge interface, and after that, extrapolating your approach to several projects if you find it useful. And also, if you're trying to introduce some innovative approaches, such as knowledge management, if you have not been doing this before, or you have been doing this before, but in a different way. So that's the purpose. You can start with a smaller thing and then just start to grow your efforts and improve the knowledge management within all of your organization. So what are the key takeaways to sum up from the user-friendliness point of view? Of course, when you try to introduce some new software inside your company in the processes that are most likely very regulated and established, there is the initial investment concern. And we always wonder, will it compensate, will it not? Well, the goal for you is, first of all, to have very clear what you're trying to create. And definitely, as with any tool, it requires a certain initial investment of time to populate your ontology, to add the specific words related to your project. But afterwards, the opportunities of optimization and improving your requirements writing are just vast. And we think that they do compensate because you'll be able to transfer this knowledge to several projects. The second key takeaway is, of course, to be able to automatize your writing process. At the end of the day, when you're trying to use some textual structures, so normally when we write requirements, they tend to have a similar structure, at least some of them, because we want to have the consistent approach to the same functionalities. And each functionality will be reflected in several requirements that definitely should follow similar textual patterns. So once you establish this approach, it will definitely enhance the automatization within your writing process and will help out your requirements writers in your project. Thirdly, the key takeaway is to be consistent, because that's the whole purpose of using some knowledge management interfaces, to have consistent knowledge inside and to have the same approach to the same concepts by all of the team members. And lastly, the main takeaway is to be efficient with your knowledge, because we do manage vast amounts, but it's mostly about optimizing the efforts and trying to get the most out of it in terms of how easily the knowledge can be managed and how much effort should it include in the first place. So this is all from my side. Now it's time for questions and answers. If you have any, please use the chat to ask me, and I'll try to do my best to answer your questions. While you're thinking, I'm going to be quickly presenting our next webinar. So this webinar is going to be slightly longer. It's going to be a 1-hour webinar that will talk about sort of a challenging topic, requirements management and managing data over the entire life cycles. That for sure is a tricky topic that we will try to address on June 14th at 5 p.m. Central European Time, and on June 16th at 9 a.m. Central European Time. So save the date and come to listen one of my colleagues talking about such an interesting topic from the requirements management point of view. All right, thank you for your attention. This is again my contact information if you have any questions after the webinar or after watching the recording, so feel free to reach out, and hope to hear your questions.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Kate, for the presentation. I have one question here, and it's basically, how does an average take to configure your knowledge base? I guess it is referring to the complexity, right, in terms of creating the ontology, including the vocabulary, so on and so forth, right?
In average, you mean time-wise?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, more or less. I guess it's referring to time.
Okay, so about configuration of your knowledge base, the goal is, of course, how big is it? So how many terms do you have? But again, it doesn't really matter how many terms you want to upload, 100 or 1000. If you will be automatically uploading them, either by, as I mentioned before, extracting your knowledge from legacy documentation or from models. So it doesn't really matter the amount. You need to load it. And probably the most challenging issue is to create a hierarchy. So to actually organize what element depends on what, if you create a car, so what elements depend, what is the system of systems, what is the system of interest, how do they interact? But when you have a clear view of how your project works, it's just a matter of practicality, and it doesn't really take that much, because we normally take the knowledge management as a very complex and time-consuming issue when we don't know how to organize it or we don't have the tools. But when we do, and when it's just a matter of creating these dependencies and linking the terms, writing patterns in order to enhance your writing requirements process. So if you have clear what do you want to create, what is your product, and what knowledge this product includes, it's just about adding up. And also remember that to start, you don't need to have a very perfect knowledge management system, because that's about improving it. It's a database that you will be improving step by step.
Okay, thank you for the answer. I think, yeah, I guess it's clarified, so thank you for that. And thank you very much for your question. And I think there are no further questions, so it's fine for you. As Katerina mentioned, please feel free to reach out to her through the email that she has addressed there. And I think we can wrap up the session for today. Is it fine for you,
Awesome.
Kate? Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll be having the next webinar session, as Katerina mentioned, regarding requirements management, and this is going to be a really interesting one. Hopefully, you can book a little bit of time on your schedule and assist and spend some time with us in the next session. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. We'll close the session here. Have a nice day.
Goodbye.